Hi YouTube, welcome back. Today I want to share with you a build that I put together for Vision GL's weekend race. This was a softcore primalist race that had no bans, and the three picked skills were Summon Stormcrows, Earthquake, or Serpent Strike. Now if you know me, I spent a lot of time making fun of the primalist. He used to look clunky. I guess he looks better now after the 083 model update. He's got 2 weak masteries and Fury Leap's 10-second jumping animation. It's just not what I like normally. So I wanted to try out Serpent Strike. I've heard it was good, and I've heard really good things about the single target damage being strong, and I wanted to give it its fair chance. I also heard that the clear speed wasn't great, so I wanted to keep that in mind while I was building this. So I found 2 popular ways of building Serpent Strike. First, solo with no companion. This would be something like Tornado, Warcry, Maelstrom, and a bunch of buffs for yourself. And the second way that I found was a companion-focused build that juices up the Scorpion to deal insane single target damage. There's another streamer in the community, Flintler. He calls this his Bessie build, and it's pretty impressive what it is. It's got some mediocre clear speed, but it has bonkers, absolutely insane single target damage with very low investment. So to start out the tournament, I knew I wanted to deal most of the damage myself, so I tried this setup. Serpent Strike, Ice Thorns, Etero's Blessing, Frenzy Totem, and Summon Scorpion. After playing the tournament for a bit, I tried to refine my defenses. I opted into Maelstrom for healing and dodge. I was thinking that I didn't really have much sources of leech for a build like this, unless I wanted to use maybe Bleeding Heart, the amulet for global leech. So I tried this setup second. I tried Serpent Strike, Ice Thorns, Warcry, and Maelstrom together, and then Summon Scorpion for the 5th skill. Eventually, somebody in Twitch chat asked me why I wasn't using Summon Raptor, and while I don't think this was particularly good for my build, that interaction did cause me to experiment with different companions. And then I found it, the Poison Bear. Alright, so Summon Scorpion gives me much more single target damage, sure. But this is Serpent Strike we're talking about. Do I really need help with single target damage? Summon Bear, on the other hand, helps me patch up some of the weaknesses of this build. Scary pack of monsters and your melee self can't walk up to it? Boom, taunt button. Big pack of monsters swarming you? Poison Bear pops off super hard with the retaliation. Clear speed in an Echo? Nope. Poison Bear's AoE is much more consistent than the Venom Nova from Scorpion. So the real alternative here would have been to use Tornado for the attack speed buff, but I loved having Bear in the build. Minimal investment, no gear affixes at all, and literally 2 nodes in my mastery. So here's our build. We're level 97. We finished rank 1 in the weekend tournament. I will say in large part to this amulet right here. I think our build was good. I'm happy with how it turned out. However, holy moly, this amulet's insane. I've read this item before. I've heard people complain about this item before, but I don't know about this 20-second cooldown. I feel like maybe 20 seconds is not a long enough time for this. So Aurora's Time Glass procs when you have 30% life remaining, and then it puts you back to full life. So in my footage, and for my character, it actually procs fairly often. It saves my life tons. However, I will say that's because a lot of my defense for this character is based on me being less than 30% life. So all of my endurance is more than 30% of my life right now. It's 739 out of 2,000 here. And you'll also see that we have, because of our mastery here, we have this Berserker node, which is when you're below 35% life, you take less damage. So a lot of our defense comes from being below this threshold. So instead of that endurance, instead of that defense kicking in, we actually just have Aurora's pop anyways. So it's kind of weird how it maybe interferes with my defense, but I will say because we're a melee character and because we don't have Fury Leap on our bar, I have a 6th unspec'd skill here, this Frenzy Totem. This could be Fury Leap if you want to jump on something. But for the most part, we're still a melee character, and eventually we need to like walk up to a monster, and it's going to be very spooky. So beyond that, let's talk about the build. We'll talk about the skills, mastery, gear, and idols, just real quick. For the skills themselves, we'll talk about Serpent Strike. We tried out a couple different things here, including coming down to Venomous Intent, which is the Poison Spit, which makes you like shoot out a small projectile, including some nodes down here. What we ended up doing for Serpent Strike was fully investing 6 out of 6 points into dodge, and then using dodge as just like another layer of defense that we get from Maelstrom, and then 1 affix on our gear too. You could come for this Poison Spit, and Poison Spit gives you like better single target damage, but it also means that when you're attacking a big pack of monsters, you're dealing a ton of damage to that one monster, but not much damage to the other monsters that your melee tag is also hitting, because it has that big AoE forward component to it. So I ended up not taking this, and I like not taking this. I don't need more single target damage. I just need more coverage so I can kill those monsters and then get to the 1v1 scenario. Because if I can get to a 1v1 scenario, it's fine. I'll kill the monster. I have enough damage. It's great. We also have 5 out of 5 points into global poison damage. This node is nuts. It's kind of like Spirit Plague, if you're familiar with Lich builds. It stacks. It has no cap. Honestly, this is the kind of thing that I would expect EHG to nerf in the future because it has infinite scaling. And anything that scales infinitely doesn't necessarily need a nerf, but it does need to be watched by EHG to make sure that it's not too much of an outlier. So this node kind of makes me feel like maybe I don't need gear, or maybe it's okay for me to sacrifice affixes on my prefixes to get healing effect or mana regeneration or dexterity or something else, because I don't need percent increased damage so much if it's coming from here. After that, we have, let's go to Ice Thorns. This is something that I knew that I wanted in the build. Ice Thorns allows us to hit more often. So it gives us extra poisons. It gives us extra chance to apply frailty on hit, those kinds of things. We're using a pole arm, which is two-handed, so we have free mana up here. So we can just like hold this down with our pinky, or if you have numlock on your keyboard, just use numlock. We have all the points down here, which gives us crit avoid. This is giving me 60 crit avoid all the time. And then armor, which I would like to scale with 1% armor suffix. We'll talk about that in the gearing suffix, in the gearing section later on. I don't have a percent armor suffix, but I would recommend one good tier 4, tier 5, tier 6% armor suffix just to take advantage of all the free flat armor that you get from something like this. After that, we have a combo of 2 skills. Let's talk about Maelstrom first, and it's going to be procced by Warcry. For Maelstrom, we have a pretty normal looking skill tree. It's all utility, no damage. So we have, coming down here, 5 points for chill. We're instantly chilling monsters with 3 stacks of chill, because remember, we have 8 to 12 stacks of Maelstrom, and each one instantly applies 1 chill all the time. We have 3 to 3 for healing winds. This does scale with healing effect, which is why we have healing effect on our build, because we don't really have much leech and we don't really have much on-hit stuff. 3 points for duration, making it more consistent. 3 points for dodge, which gives us a ton of dodge. I'll show you what that looks like. And then 4 points just for mana efficiency. For our last 2 points, we can just go the lightning storm here and hitting additional targets. This is, again, another proc for frailty chance and poison chance. And then, to go along with this is kind of a package deal, is Warcry. At one point, I tried using Warcry without using Maelstrom, but I think the healing effect and the dodge that you get from Maelstrom, especially because the dodge also coincides with Serpent Strike's dodge, feels great. So I'm going to recommend all of that to you. We have 3 points down here in Breath of Terra. This does scale with healing effect. And then we have 4 points into Maelstrom. So we're proccing this all the time. Actually, as I'm walking around, I'm actually holding down Q and W on my character. And we're just always auto-casting Warcry, and we're auto-casting Ice Thorns as well. As we're walking around, you'll see that my dodge fluctuates between 42 and 52%. And then as soon as I start attacking, go do some attacking here. As soon as I start doing some attacking, we're getting up to 70, 74, 75, maybe 76% dodge chance. And this is from Maelstrom, from Serpent Strike itself, and then we have 1 affix on a piece of gear. We had a tier 5 for a bit, and then eventually we had a tier 6. After that, instead of having the full like 10 or 8 second cooldown for Warcry, we're spec'd all the way over here to have half the cooldown. So that's what all these points are for. We don't need anything other than this. Last point to call out is 1 point into Breath of Terra here. We actually use this in order to heal the bear. So the bear has tons of life, a good chunk of armor, but he doesn't actually have any source of regeneration, any source of leech. So every once in a while, when our Warcry pops, we're also healing bear. So let's go on and talk about bear. This is the 5th skill here. The only things that I will strongly recommend to you will be this point all the way over here. It feels like we need all 3 points, at least 2, and probably all 3 points into Winged Thorns. So if you don't know, we have this note here that says your bear retaliates every time that it takes damage, and then we have the retaliation threshold is less, so that this retaliation happens more often whenever it's hit. So I think there's a range at which ranged monsters will attack with their basic attack your bear, and the bear needs to have enough range on their retaliation to hit the ranged monster's basic attacks. It felt like 2 points in here was not quite enough, like it wasn't hitting the ranged monster's basic attacks, so I put 3 points here. You could trim 1 point here and put it somewhere else, but this is what felt good to me. In order to push to 300 in the arena, I wanted as much life and as much armor as I can get. So the compromise that I felt was necessary was 3 points into flat health, and then we have percent health and more health later on. But this is 300 flat health for us, and then 4 points into 600 armor. So you're going to see the bear has a good bit of armor, a good bit of dodge as well, and then we're healing him. He also has endurance, but we'll talk about that in just a second. We also have a more damage multiplier. This is 45% more damage. It's not nearly as many more multipliers as Scorpion has, but it's a more damage multiplier. So remember, a generic more damage multiplier like this that doesn't have the word hit on it does apply to poison. So this is like some of our poison damage here. And then last off, we're coming all the way to the left to give us some extra poison chance. Remember, poison chance is also going to come from aspect of the Viper. Viper from the Beastmaster skill tree applies to not only yourself, but also to your minions, or I guess to your companions. So that'll give him 100, 200% chance to poison. So he's got about 300% chance to poison on hit. Now that we've kind of gone over the skills, let's talk about the mastery real quick as well. I think we're going to have some pretty normal looking stuff here. I want to call out 2 things to you. One is the defense that we have in the build, and then 2 is only having 2 points dedicated to our companion. We haven't gone out of the way. We haven't spec'd a bunch of stuff in our gear. We only have 2 points that benefit our companion, and those feel like enough, which is great. So in our base class here, we have a couple points spec'd into life, not much more than that. We have health, resistance, 1 and more health here. These are some of my last points. Going into like level 90 and whatnot, I ended up spec'ing into these. Honestly, the companion revival speed ended up being something that I was happy with, but it's not really why I was taking this. I was really just taking this for myself, and it happened to have companion life on it too. We have 5 points here and 1 in order to heal the minion. And then we have 5 points into Berserker. I've actually had questions from people in Twitch chat saying like, hey, if I'm not a melee build, or if I'm maybe you're a poison build and poison builds don't benefit from like quote unquote melee damage, should I still take this? And the answer is yes, right? Like anything that says less damage taken or reduced damage taken, that is at an absolute premium in Last Epoch. You should take all those nodes. Let's look at the other classes. We have no points in either Shaman or Druid. While you're gearing up, you could spec points into endurance or armor over here, just to help cap your endurance if you're not already there. And we've 83 points into Beastmaster. So the first points here are going to look very common for you. We have less damage taken from nearby enemies, aspect of the boar, life, aspect of the boar, aspect of the boar, aspect of the boar, aspect of the... Aspect of the boar is very good. We're a melee build. We can proc it on hit, and it's excellent. It's everything that every build wants, right? Beyond that, we have a couple points up here, and then aspect of the Viper. So let's go over this. Melee poison chance and poison resistance is great. We have 10 points into dodge rating. This might look like an outlier to you, but remember, we have haste on hit. We actually have haste on hit from a couple of sources. We have a bunch of flat dodge coming in from both Serpent Strike and from Maelstrom. So this percent dodge fits perfectly into our build. And we also have some minion dodge that goes into this. It sounds weird having minion dodge on a retaliation bear because we want the bear to be hit. Why are we giving him dodge rating? Well, the answer is it's spooky once you get to wave 300 in the arena, and it's nice to have a little bit of survivability on the bear. We need him to stay alive just a little bit longer than he would otherwise, so these points are great. You could have 5, you could have 8 points here, but I ended up going all 10 points. Next up is Life in the Wilderness. This node makes my endurance apply to my companions. So not only is this like a generically strong node because it gives vitality, which is 10 life, and endurance threshold, it also makes my bear tanky. So if my bear gets on low life, it's no big deal. He's probably not going to die. Beyond that, we have Avian Shelter. This is endurance threshold and phys res. We could trim some of these nodes, but I was running out of things to spec into. So I tried to remove physical resistance from my build so that I could better make use of this node here. It also gives some minion physical resistance. That's not why we're taking it. It's just a nice little coincidence. If you played Serpent Strike before, or if you've ever looked at a Beastmaster before, you know that aspect of the Viper is absolutely nuts. It's the cornerstone of the build. For our helmet, you're going to see that we have aspect of the Viper on it. For our chest piece, we have aspect of the Viper on it. For our idols, you're going to see that aspect of the Viper is the most important thing there. So any kind of increased effect of aspect of the Viper is going to give us chance to poison on hit, percent increased damage over time, and increased effect of poison effectiveness. So aspect of the Viper grants poison effect. So as long as that's tied to the aspect of the Viper itself, when we scale Aspect of the Viper effect, we're also scaling Poison effect, which is just a tremendously strong way of scaling for just one prefix on a piece of gear or for just one idle slot. So let's talk about the companion next. We have 2 points that are kind of a nod to the fact that we have a companion in our build. We have one here, which is Artor's Loyalty, limit to 1 companion. We have companion size and more companion damage. And next up, all the way over here, is Natural Bond. This gives us more companion health, which goes along with our flat health and our increased health. Now we have more health. And then we also have more companion damage. And this generic more damage multiplier obviously also applies to poisons. So it's exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for. Let's talk about the gearing process next, and then we'll talk about the idols for the build. This character actually felt like life, vitality, attack speed, Aspect of the Viper. That's pretty much the entire build, and you'll see that as we walk through it. Because we have so much % increased damage coming in not only from Aspect of the Viper, but also from Scorpion Strikes here in the Serpent Strike tree, we don't really need to go out of our way to get a ton of poison damage or damage over time, % increased damage. I had a different weapon that I was using at some point that had an exalted, like 250% increased poison damage over time, which is a big number, but it kind of pales in comparison to how much % increased damage you get from stacking up attack speed, stacking up the node from Aspect of the Viper and from Serpent Strike itself. So the % increased damage is not that important. Also, that other weapon that I had a 0.97 attack speed base, which is like that implicit modifier up there. And this Naginata is really the best base for us. It's the best base because it's the only 2-handed polearm that gives us 1.05 attack speed, which is the highest attack speed possible for a polearm. So we need to have a Naginata. There's no other way about it. Other than that, melee attack speed. If I could have one exalted modifier here, it would be either melee attack speed or chance to poison on hit. The poison damage and the frailty, they're fine, but they're not nearly as important as the attack speed, getting it wherever possible, and the chance to poison on hit, which is global. So it also applies to things like Ice Thorns or Warcry, right? For a helmet, we can go Crit Avoid, Health, Vitality, anything like that. And then we have a prefix, which is important, so Aspect of the Viper. And then we also have a prefix, which is important on the chest piece, Aspect of the Viper. So where we can get Aspect of the Viper, we need to get Aspect of the Viper. Similar to that, where we can get % increased life, we should get % increased life. I don't have it here, unfortunately, but like this is the kind of thing that you would be thinking about, right? So my belt should be hybrid life and % life. I have % increased elemental resistance because I couldn't fix my gear in time for the tournament itself, but it's the kind of thing that I ended up with. We have one big % increased dodge rating. I wanted to call this out. Remember, we have dodge from Maelstrom and dodge from using Serpent Strike over and over and over and over and over. And having one big tier 5, maybe tier 6 or tier 7 dodge rating roll somewhere is excellent. We can talk about the gloves next. The gloves are perfect for any kind of non-crit ailment build. Most non-crit builds in Last Epoch are going to be ailment builds anyways, so we don't care about critting. We just care about applying the ailment for poisons as fast as possible. 38% increased melee attack speed. Incredible. It's like 20 or 30% more attack speed than we get from like a normal pair of gloves. We're sacrificing hybrid life. We're sacrificing frailty on hit. We're sacrificing an ease of gearing and getting resistances in better places. But in terms of attack speed and like the ROI, return on investment for like the slot and like having this unique, it's really, really high. So I would recommend this unless you have just like an absolutely absurd pair of gloves that you could use instead. Last but not least, for the gearing, let's talk about the 2 rings and the relic slot. Rings and the prefixes here are for the most part where you're getting all of your % increased damage, because there's not too much other than that you could get instead. Now for us, because we get so much % increased damage just by attacking and stacking up Scorpion Strikes from the Serpent Strike skill tree, we really don't need too much % increased damage, and it's nice for us to flex these spots to get other things instead. So maybe like a little bit of mana regeneration goes a long way. It helps us to spam our skills, and maybe Numlock Warcry and Numlock Ice Thorns, so it's not a big deal. But more important than that, because we are a ailment build, we're not bleed, we don't get to use a unique item like Valdir's Chalice, but we don't really have any good source of leech. We could go Bleeding Heart, but I was so unlucky not to find a Bleeding Heart, and it wasn't something that I could use. Shucks. But what we do have is a lot of healing that comes in from Warcry once every 5 seconds, and then Maelstrom all the time. Because remember, a Maelstrom is per stack, 6 healing per second. And we have between 8 and 12, right? So call it like an average of 10 stacks of Maelstrom that we have at any given point in time, which is about 60 healing per second. and we can scale that healing with increased healing effect. So my recommendation for you would be about 100% increased healing effect. For us, we went a little bit overboard with 312% increased healing effect. I would willingly drop the exalted healing effect off of my relic in order to get like a different relic instead. Maybe I get a relic that has the dual cold and necrotic res. I could flex around my other resistances and make different things work. But this is the best one that I have, and it's a ton of healing effect, and it feels pretty good. You don't need quite this much, but I would say at least 100% increased healing effect feels great for using a Maelstrom and Warcry in order to augment, your life recovery for a build that doesn't have leech in other cases. And then last piece of gearing for this character is the idol slots. Ideally, you would have 4 idols that have excellent tier 1 top rolls of this. So mine's not particularly good. Yours is going to be much better because you're going to play this character for more than 4 days, right? So we have 35 to 95% increased healing effect. That's exactly what you're looking for. 85, 90, 95% healing effect would be insane for scaling up the healing from Warcry and from Maelstrom. As a suffix for this idol, we have 10 to 24% increased aspect of the Viper, and we want probably at least 100% increased aspect of the Viper. Remember, we also have a prefix on the chest piece and a prefix on the body armor. So maybe 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. We're looking for at least maybe 15s and 20s across the board. And then if we can get more than that, the more the merrier, right? The suffixes are the most important thing here, having that increased aspect of the Viper effect. If we can get healing effect, awesome. If we can't, just try to make it as relevant as possible. 3% chance to create an aftershock under an enemy on melee attack. Sure, I guess this is fine, but it's not going to make or break the build. Just try to be as relevant as possible in your prefixes, and then if you can, get 20 to 24% increased aspect of the Viper effect as the suffix on these. For the small idols, you can fill this out with whatever resistance you need. I chose to go with things that have both poison res and healing effect, and then just a smattering of other things as well, just to kind of round out the resistances and the healing effect where we can. So all in all, I'll say that Serpent Strike was way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was not going to have fun playing this build. Honestly, I kind of thought that I was going to play it for one day, maybe 6 or 7 hours, and then give it up, go play something else instead. But this character far exceeded my expectations. Serpent Strike is fun to play. It's a nice and speedy playstyle. You can basically one-tap a pack of enemies and then just keep walking past them, and either the poisons will kill them, or your poison bear, as he walks past, will get attacked and retaliate and clear the map for you. So this character was like better clear speed than I was expecting, excellent single target damage, fun to play, fun to experiment with all the different combinations of 3rd, 4th, and 5th skills that I wanted to use on the character. It was just, maybe there's something to this Primalist guy. Maybe I'll play some more Primalist builds in the future. So in 084, which is the next patch we're going to get after this, we're going to have more updates to Werebear and updates to Spriggan. The Werebear new model and the animations there look incredible. If you haven't seen those, go look in the forums on lastepoch.com or check them out on Reddit too. But it's like, it feels like there's a whole new class that I'm allowed to play as long as you're not playing Swipe. Because Swipe is just not something that I want to play until something changes in the future and it becomes more fun. So that's just my opinion on it. But that's the character. I hope you enjoy it. Big shout out to Vision GL. You can visit him on Twitch. I'll have a link in the description of this video to him. He's been hosting these tournaments every weekend. He does 5 weeks of softcore, 5 weeks of hardcore. And these have been a lot more fun than I expected them to be. Just pushing as far into the arena, it's a great time. Also, shout out to Flintler, who helped me learn more about playing Scorpion builds. Flintler, I'll drop a link in the description for him as well. He's got a Bessie build, he calls it. It's a Serpent Strike build that focuses on scaling the damage from Scorpion and has absolutely insane damage, maybe 2 to 3 times my single target damage with no investment at all. It's a companion build, it's a minion build. It's not really something I want to play, but he loves it, and it's really good for single target. So just because I know you stayed this long and you want to know, my single target damage is about 300k. That's about where my character tops out. If I wanted to cheese and use things like Frenzy Totem to get more damage, use things like Tornado to get more damage, more attack speed buffs on top of that, I could. But I think for 300k damage, it's enough damage that I could kill everything in the game. Felt really good with the damage. Felt very easy to kill Shade of Erebus. And, if you want to get to 1 million damage poison ticks, that's on you. I'm sure you can figure it out. But for me, getting to 300 waves in arena, carried by Aurora's Time Glass and from Taunt from the Bear, and having a pretty synergistic build to back it up, I had a good time. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.